Welcome back to Come Back with a Warrant podcast. I'm Brandon Dinetz.
And I'm Monica Ishak. Before we kickstart this week's episode, this is your reminder that this podcast is not legal advice. It's real, unfiltered, and for entertainment purposes only. If you need to speak with a lawyer, call one. Or better yet, call us. So today we are going to be talking about the types of clients that you'll inevitably encounter, especially if you work in public defense.
Fuck it, I'm calling them the crazies. We're talking about the crazies this episode. I am so excited. We're going to do it.
Oh my
We
God.
are talking about the people that get in trouble and then they somehow have their own interpretation of the legal system and it gets wild.
Yeah.
Okay. These are the people that bring the noise to the courtroom when they come and they are talking about the rights that they have that the lawyers don't even know exist because they are just telling everybody for the first time about these new rights.
Listen, this is true. I have had my share. I have stories, okay? But not only the people that come into the courthouse and say that stuff, but also the people that I think you sent me something on Instagram or you were telling me about it. The guy that put on his window, like, I know my rights, like through the windshield or through the window.
Right. This episode is about the people that know their rights better than the lawyers and the police and the court and the judges. Okay. These are the people that you'll see videos on social media of them getting pulled over and they hold up a little sign in the window that says, I'm not going to open the window. I know my rights. I'm not consenting to. That's beautiful that you know those rights. You don't have to be an asshole about it.
Yeah.
And there is a way to handle encounters with police and encounters with the court system in the right way.
Yeah.
And still show us all that you know something about the legal system. Okay.
Still show us all. That's hilarious
Yeah.
because that really is a part of like the thing.
It is.
Like
And
we must announce it.
People that are screaming that they know their rights or telling the court that they are not a citizen, they are a traveler, and they are under the UCC business code going to explain to a criminal court that the criminal court doesn't apply to them.
If that sounded like it didn't make any sense, that's because it didn't.
That's right. It doesn't make any sense.
It's not because it came out of a lawyer's mouth.
Right.
Like, it's not a real thing.
And that is what it sounds like when you encounter a sovereign citizen in...
You know, I actually discovered that the U.S. government considers sovereign citizens as domestic terrorists.
That totally makes sense. If you've had to prosecute one or defend one,
God.
that totally makes sense to me.
They are, honestly, I think they're worse to deal with as a prosecutor. Let's talk about what a sovereign
citizen. It's like a prank video happening in court,
in real life.
It's real.
It's real.
There's nothing you can do to stop it.
No, nothing at all. Like, I don't know how it gets. I don't know how there's any finality in a sovereign citizen's case, but it ends up happening. But
they go to trial. They're non-jury trials. Excuse me.
You had
I am
non-jury.
saying that in my experience,
Yeah.
the way that they ended was non-jury trials
But
because they were
explain
misdemeanors
why.
and they were generally misdemeanors and they were traffic cases and these were in front of judges that had enough and were pushing the case to a resolution.
But also because they would give you guys such hell that jail would be waived.
Well, yeah.
That's why they would get...
Because if you go non-jury, if you force a case non-jury, you're waiving jail and waiving adjudication, meaning conviction.
Yeah.
And we would do that because we needed finality to the case.
Because they refuse. So, okay, this is how it happened. So, like, at least I will talk from the public defense standpoint, and then he can elaborate more on his perspective. But when I was, and I say this as you really experience this as a public defender because they don't recognize people who consider themselves sovereign citizens don't recognize that recognize themselves as who they are under like their government name. So like state of Florida versus let's say Monica Ishak and let's say I would not answer to Monica Ishak in the courtroom. So when you're in the courtroom, they have the docket and your name and they call your case up. They don't respond to that. They will go up there and say that I am an entity of whatever, and I am not obligated to follow X, Y, and Z. And according to the U.S. Constitution or some treaty, they'll cite some international treaties that I've never heard of. Some of them will file written motions and, you'll be like, hey, do you need a public defender? And then they'll be like, no, we don't need you. But then they'll go in front of the judge and they'll basically make all these comments. And then on the other side is the state attorney, which let's say is Brandon in this situation. The judge would then, sometimes appoint the public defender despite them saying they don't want the public defender. And then, or we would be standby counsel and we would have to try to help them work out the case, be like, okay, well, this is, how the case goes. You get your evidence. You want to go to trial. You want the same song and dance like you're supposed to do with every client. These people refuse to talk to you. They will curse you out. They want nothing to do with you or the system. They don't think that anything applies to them. And they cite anything under the sun to get out of this situation, which obviously, but then they still come to court. That's the weird part.
They are always ready to fight the case for not them.
Yeah.
Under their terminology.
But you're obligated to be in court under this name. And if you don't show up, they know that they're going to get a warrant.
And that's what ultimately makes them start talking in court. Because from my perspective, the way that those things usually went down was the end of the docket would come around and the judge there'd be one or two people sitting in the back, usually just one person, and the judge would call the case and they would say, sir, is that you? And they'd say, I don't recognize, I'm not recognized by that name, or I don't accept, recognition under that name. And then the judge will say, okay, well, if you are not so-and-so, then so-and-so is about to get a warrant. And, well, hold on, I'll come up and I will make arguments on behalf of so-and-so. Okay. The person will come up and oftentimes they do file their own motions with a lot of words that are bolded or complete or capitalized or fonts of different size. They do it. And you would think it would get better now with ChatGPT, maybe at least helping them with like the font and the styling, whatever. But they would come up to the podium and the judge would say, okay, we're here for, which more times than not was a driving under suspended license case because they don't recognize the state's law or resisting. And the judge would say, okay, you're being charged with so-and-so, so-and-so. And the first thing they would do is move to dismiss the charges because the case, the government doesn't apply to them and it doesn't apply to their name. Nothing applies to, nothing. The laws don't apply to them or to the named individual. And the judges would always say, okay, well, did you submit that in writing? Okay. And if they did or they didn't, it gets denied. And then the judge would say, state, do you have anything to contribute or add here? And usually it would just be whoever the prosecutor was just saying, judge, the offer in this case is XYZ. This person has, this many priors or whatever it was. And the judge would say, okay, did you hear that? Do you want to accept an offer? No. Okay, we're setting this for a trial. And the prosecutor would waive jail and adjudication. So that way it would go to trial because this person wouldn't accept it. And when they would be asked to sign for the case, they would say no. And when somebody would go to hand them paperwork saying what the next date on the case is, they would say, I'm not accepting that. I oftentimes would have paper that I would have to give over to a sovereign and I would just like put it down on the podium and just like say into the microphone, I just physically handed it over to whoever the hell they're claiming to be at this given time. And then you would go to trial against them. They would raise the same arguments again. The judge would say, none of these arguments are legally relevant or applicable here. And I would have to put on some semblance of a case where I would, show them their own driving record and say, is this you? And they would say no. And I would have to go through this whole rigmarole of, okay, well, is that the person you're representing? Or is that the person that you acknowledge XYZ? And like, they never would agree with the concept, but then the police officer would be like, yeah, that's the guy that I pulled over. And you're
wasting
okay,
everybody's
thank
time.
you. And then the person would be found guilty. There would be no conviction. They would have a court fine that they will never pay because that'll keep their license suspended. And then you wait to see them back in a few weeks.
Yeah, it's literally such a painful process for the state and it's not something that happens every day, but often enough that you would have to deal with it. And the first time I encountered a sovereign and it was like a public defender client, I was talking to them and they started saying like citing all this stuff and saying that they're an entity of whatever. And I was like this 24-year-old public defender that was like just trying to like try my cases and like handle my case. I was like, so then I went to a superior. I was like, they're like, I thought I didn't know something. I thought I was like, needed more information. So I was like, they're saying that I need to cite this law, like all this stuff. And they were like, no, this is a sovereign citizen. This is something you will encounter. And I was like, not this being a real, like actual thing in the system where people are like this such a hindrance. Like, honestly, like,
To drain.
yeah, it's like it's all over things that don't really like oftentimes from a defense attorney's perspective, if there's something I know the state can prove it, I'm not wasting time. You know what I mean? Like, I get discovery in advance. Sometimes, they can identify my client, but then the element of fighting, like there's an element that we can fight that I'm not gonna put energy into fighting my client's identity. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
if it's a self-defense case, I don't have to say that that wasn't my client, that I agreed that was my client, but I'm arguing that that is self-defense. Like, there are certain points of a case that you can choose to fight. These people fight the fact that they are even that person on the other end of the case. And so it makes it so much harder to get anything done in the system. And so I am just that was just one thing. I felt like as a public defender, I think this is something most public defenders feel that they get a lot of the grunt of things or like the short end of the stick in not them, but them and their clients in court versus like the state. And so that was one thing that I believe the state got the short end of the stick on.
Yeah, having to deal that's just.
That was something that was
And
not.
you know what? I felt bad for the judges that I was in front of also dealing with it because they kept their cool. They would always
Yeah.
keep their cool with these people and like still treat them with respect until it gets too crazy where they have to hold them in contempt. But
I've never seen that.
I haven't seen that with a sovereign. I've
Yeah.
seen that happen, but
Yeah.
I haven't seen that with a sovereign. But yeah, they're a lot. And I apologize for using the word crazy to some extent because these people really are a little nutty, but you can't
Definitely.
say crazy anymore. Gotta be
Yeah. Everything has to.
everything is exactly. So
But there's also like not just sovereign citizens. There's so many different people who, and I think this generally, and this is maybe because there's information is accessible, like more easily accessible to people, whether it's through chat, TikTok, Instagram, and maybe even the show where you feel like maybe you have confidence in knowing things from the education that we're providing, which is amazing. But at the same time, there's a certain way to handle things and a certain way to go about things. And I think that meeting like starting with aggression when you get pulled over, maybe thinking that certain things are entrapment when it's not. Like, there are certain things that get thrown around and discussed, and like I've mentioned before, like people when they talk about Miranda rights, they didn't hear their Miranda rights, so the case needs to get dismissed. And like we get the body worn camera in discovery, the state and the defense attorney, and we review it, and oftentimes it's not unusual to see things like that in the body worn camera, whether it's like, you like, I don't know, comments or like.
someone yelling out they know their rights or this is entrapment or I
Yeah,
mean, you do see those things. Yes, you see that.
a
And
lot.
what's interesting is I like that we brought up entrapment because there are people that question whether or not entrapment happens more often than it really does. I think people think that entrapment is a regular
Defense.
defense, and it really isn't. It's very rare that
Yeah.
comes up. The legal definition of entrapment is law enforcement inducing someone to commit a crime they otherwise wouldn't.
Yeah.
But, you know, just selling drugs to an officer is not necessarily entrapment,
No.
especially if you were a drug dealer, you were
Well, that's the
already going to
point.
be selling people drugs. So that's not entrapment. Exactly. That's why I
Yeah.
use that example. That's not entrapment. But a lot of people think that what the police do to catch them is entrapment. And it is so rare that that comes up as a defense.
Yeah. Yeah. You would have to prove that you were not going to commit this crime, but for the cops' actions. But like, that's not usually a thing. Usually it's just another exchange or transaction. And that's the point, is that you are regularly selling drugs. And this is oftentimes how it comes up. They're watching. They watch the drug dealers from a distance. And whether it's like actually physically down the street watching them or whatever, monitoring, and they keep an eye on you, and then they'll be like, okay, we'll send in someone from the drug task force or whatever they call it, and they'll have somebody that's like yadded up that looks like somebody that would buy drugs in that person's eyes, and then they go for it and they do the meetup and they buy the drugs and then they get arrested, and then people are like, that's entrapment. And it's like, no, and part of the police report talks about all the times they watched you sell drugs, and
Hmm.
they saw this package, and then they stopped this person with the package, and then they searched this, and it's this long police report. And then oftentimes this drug bust either turns into trafficking or sale or whatever. But yeah, that's not entrapment. It's just another drug sale. So that's the other thing that people think that they know. It's either like the law enforcement seeking an opportunity is not committing a crime.
That's a really good way of
Like, it's
putting that.
really just seeking an opportunity.
Yeah. That's a very good way of putting that. I mean, because the bottom line is if their investigation is not going to take such a turn. So something else that you see people yell out in addition to the entrapment is I know my rights. And we see it in the videos that we watch, we see it in the videos that we get from Discovery, we see it in the videos online. People that are yelling that they know their rights. And generally those people don't know their rights because if they did, they probably wouldn't be saying anything at all. That's first. And second, they would know that if there is a violation of their rights, that can be challenged at an appropriate time. And the appropriate time is not while they're being handcuffed.
Yeah, that's so true. And like also like maybe you do. Let's say you do know your rights, but like it's just understanding that whatever aggression they're gonna meet it, they're gonna match your aggression or worse. Like it's not going to make the situation better. So like I think law enforcement, when they see that somebody's not, if they're trying to give you a traffic ticket, which oftentimes so many crimes escalate or are, either I don't want to say so many crimes like occur, but people get charged with crimes so often just from a traffic stop. Like that's oftentimes like the way that things get there. And like whether that's a search or someone saying, I know my rights, and then it starts with a resisting, and then they end
Yeah.
up searching you and finding drugs and or a gun, whatever. And then things then charges.
Escalation happens when people run their mouths.
Exactly.
Always.
That's my
The
point.
situation always escalates. I have never seen a video where somebody yells out, I know my rights, and the cops go, oh, you do? All right. Well, that is all the time we have. Thank you very much. And they just give your license back, shake your hand, and let me close the car door for you. That doesn't
Never.
happen.
Never.
So, if anything, the cops hearing someone yell they know their rights or entrapment or anything else, in my mind, nowadays, the police officer is probably thinking to themselves, oh, this video is going to go viral.
Yeah.
This is going to be something that I can show my boys. Like,
Yeah.
that is what they're thinking at that point because they know what comes next is the situation escalates. This person's going to be put in cuffs and it's probably going to be a rough arrest.
Yeah. And the thing is, body worn camera now is like, I don't know about, I don't want to say every single police department because I don't know, but I think every police department in Palm Beach County has body worn now at this point. When we first started practicing, PBSO didn't have it, and that was
Nope.
a problem. But
Does the FHP have them yet? Does the troopers have them?
I don't know.
The Florida Highway Patrol didn't have them
Back
for a
then.
long
Yeah.
time, and I don't know if they do have them. I still don't think they do. I still think they only have dash cam. Maybe they do, though.
Yeah.
But that was one of the agencies that didn't have them. But most agencies, you're correct, do have
Yeah.
body-worn cameras.
And so like because of that, you don't need to worry about like getting it on recording, making sure. I mean, if you want to have it just in case, that's fine, but it doesn't need to be a disruption or the feature of like the stop. So like, I don't know, maybe we can just give basic tips on like what rights you actually have when it comes to a traffic stop and like let everything else kind of play out in court. Like, okay, so when it comes to searching, let's say you're getting stopped by an officer for a traffic citation and they just ask you, can I search your car? You can say no.
Correct.
You can
And
say
you
no.
should.
You don't need to say, I know my rights. You're not like, you don't need like none of that. You can just say no. If they're asking you questions, they've had you in the traffic stop for, let's say, I don't know what time frame wouldn't, but like, let's say it's been longer than the time you think would give you a ticket. So it's like more than 5,
Or they're
10 minutes.
moving beyond the questions that would be necessary to give you a ticket.
Exactly.
If they've moved beyond who you are and where you're coming from, maybe even where you're coming from, once they get to a certain point where they're not talking about you running a stop sign anymore or
Yeah.
something insignificant like that, that's the indication that you are being questioned and you
Yes.
should probably stop making any statements.
Exactly. And you can say, am I being detained? You know, I would like
Correct.
to call my lawyer. There's like just things that you can say that will not escalate and still protect you. So if it feels like it's being extended, am I being detained? Can I call my lawyer? If they ask to search, no, you may not. Even if you don't have anything
What
to
were you
hide.
where what were you doing today? Whatever the case may be, you can say,
I don't want
I
to
don't
talk
want to
about it.
answer any
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you can
exactly.
be respectful about it.
So you know, there's so, and I think getting into breaking down maybe the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment might get a little too like nuanced, but I think that there is a way to communicate what needs to be said or what maybe you feel in a way that isn't so like going to create something worse for you. Because the point of you saying, I know my rights is really to protect yourself because
Right.
you don't want to get in trouble or you don't want this to escalate. And maybe it will escalate, but understand that even if it does escalate, at least it wasn't because of you. And then
Right.
later down the line, it's something that your attorney can at least mitigate or put a fire out, file a motion to suppress because your rights were violated. You don't have to try to enforce your rights at that point because if you get a good lawyer or, an attorney that knows their shit, which even public defenders for the most part do, you'll be able to fight that case in court. So it's not something that I think that people oftentimes get injured and shot and like just all these like things escalate that do not need to even get there, could have been so avoided. And I'm not saying that this is something that is on you, but I think that a lot of people do take the responsibility, like their responsibility out of it. And they're like, oh, well, they're law enforcement. They're supposed to serve and protect, which I agree. I agree. But at the same time, there are moments where like coming from a law enforcement's perspective or from the court's perspective even, they have a duty to protect themselves and the public when you are a danger. So if you are acting like you may be a danger, they're going to meet and match that aggression. They're not going to be like, oh, as much as I do believe there should be de-escalation, there should be more training, like that's not the case. So we need to do what we can in order to mitigate as much as possible. So like there are things that can be said in the interaction that can like minimize the issues, I think.
You can de-escalate the situation to an extent.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get out of it, but you can de-escalate the situation. And maybe, what, that's not even to right. You may be able to get out of a situation because if you are getting stopped for something that is, a minor traffic infraction and is a worse crime that you're actually committing at the same time, you know, getting into a negative interaction with the police officer is going to probably lead to the discovery of another crime or aid in your prosecution. And what I mean by that is the angrier you get, then
Yeah.
now the state attorney's office, let's say they're uh, prosecuting you for a DUI, they can say, oh, that anger, that was belligerence that went to his consumption of alcohol or narcotics. Or they can say that that aggression is why the police officer had to do what they did. And that aggression is what led to this resisting arrest. I mean, you can control the situation by remaining calm, being polite, and I say it all the time, but if you are and you assert your rights respectfully, you can avoid the situation from escalating.
Yeah. And if it becomes a triable issue, like if you're going to trial and you're acting, even if you're right and you're acting kind of belligerent or angry or whatever, that will be seen in a bad light by the jury. And I'd actually a good amount, maybe like a handful of cases that where my client was acting appropriately and it made them look like the victim and that like that was our defense. It's like they were being bullied by this officer, like that it contributes to the argument and it helps. So not to say like, oh yeah, you should be like play yourself the victim. No, but like being the bigger person, being the person to de-escalate, being the person to be calm and say, as nerve-wracking as it is, because I know like even like just getting a ticket can make people feel like anxious and being around law enforcement or like not knowing how things may escalate is causes anxiety. So I get it. But being that person definitely, because it's all documented for the most part by agencies or yourself, you're recording, that's something that will become evidence and will be seen by the jury, by the judge, by the state attorney, and it's considered in the case. So that's a really good point. Like the angry person, the belligerent person, that or the girl that couldn't stop crying, you know what I mean? Like just
Yeah.
get it together.
I had a client call me last week from a traffic stop while he was being stopped by the police. And he called me to ask me a question while this was going on, while the police were running his information. The police came back and he said, hey, I'm on the phone with my lawyer's on the phone. And that it it almost started to take a negative turn. But my client stayed very calm. He said, he's like, I'm just putting the phone down. He put the phone down next to him. Officer, made a comment like, well, I don't know why you need to have your lawyer on the phone right now, whatever it was.
Yeah.
The My client stayed calm. He was respectful the entire time, and he has an open case right now. And they very easily could have given him a ticket that would have caused a brand new open case.
Yeah.
And based on him being polite, that didn't happen.
Yeah, because they have discretion and they can and honestly, once you piss them off, they will probably look for an opportunity to arrest you because they're like, "Okay, you know what?" And honestly, like, it's less paperwork to not make an arrest. It is a lot of paperwork to arrest somebody, and so I don't wanna say cops don't wanna do it, but it's not the fun part of their job, you know what I
No.
mean? If you give them, kind of an opportunity to not do that stuff and you are polite and you are not escalating and they can give you a notice to appear instead of taking you to jail or whatever it is, then do it because at the end of the day, your ass is the one that's going to jail, not
Right.
them. Like,
And also remember this officer, this isn't necessarily the last interaction you're going to have with them, because if your case does go to trial, guess who's coming back and testifying?
that cop.
And the more they remember that interaction with you, the more exciting it
Mm,
was for whatever reason, they are going to be more than happy to testify against you in court.
yeah,
And that is not a good thing to have when you have an officer that is gung ho to testify in
so
court.
true.
That you
And you
don't
can
need that.
tell. You can
And you
tell.
can tell that they
Mhm.
they really stand behind the arrest they made that day. You don't need it.
I had a client because she was acting so I don't she was I think she was acting like she was great. So like the cop that arrested her came and testified on her behalf, even though that cop arrested her. To her defense. Why? Because she was like it mind you, it was a domestic, so they were not even
Oh,
there
okay. All
during
right. So it's
the
a little bit different.
yeah, but
Yeah.
still, like, they could have been like, "This is a domestic
But he
abuser,"
still
like,
made the arrest.
they made the arrest and they still, like, came to court after to testify on her behalf, like, under our subpoena, and were going to say really great things. Like, we got the case dismissed before she
That
made it to
happened.
court,
Right.
but it was literally a part of the plan. She was one of our witnesses. I was like, "This is a first for
Yeah,
me."
that doesn't
It's
happen.
pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty
But
cool.
that's because she literally kept it cool, and she was like she felt bad. I think she felt bad that she made that arrest.
Well, we've talked about it in
Yeah.
Florida. If the police get called for a domestic, somebody's getting arrested. That's just the
Somebody,
way that it goes. So
unfortunately.
nice to see the police try to make it right. But
Yeah.
well, for that client, luckily it did
It
work
worked
out.
out, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously with this, like, mass generate information, I think that it's hard to kind of fact check things. And so that's also a part of the problem that people, like, kinda have issues trusting lawyers, but really, like, having people that are willing to give you, like I think you can feel attorneys out when you're doing consults with them, and you can see, like, does this person really know their shit? And then if you did research and you talk to your attorney about it, like, for me, I just review that stuff, whatever they send me, and I'm like, "Oh, okay," like, I'll take a look at it and let you know, and sometimes it's never I don't wanna say never, but it's oftentimes it's not applicable, and I'll explain why. It I've had a handful of times clients have provided something to me that I was like, "Oh, I could use this. Thank you."
Well, the other thing is the people that we're talking about in this episode that are making the signs or yelling they know their rights oftentimes are getting information from TikTok or Instagram that is either other people doing that or some shoddy lawyer saying, "Hey, you know what you can do is you can hold up a sign when you get stopped." Like, I don't know who that lawyer is that I'm doing his weird impression, but that that is where they're getting this crap from. It's very important, and even as to people who do post on social media legal stuff and advice, and certainly from my personal account, my business account, I'll post, different updates on the law or advice. It's important to know where you're getting your information from and to make sure they're a credible source. Like, I have to make sure, and I do make sure and fact check the things that I'm putting online, because I don't want to be found to not be credible for people that are potentially looking to hire me, or people out there that are just trying to get advice and information. You need to remain credible. You need to fact check your stuff.
Yeah.
So you can't just take advice from anybody out there. There's a lot of people that are out there. There are a lot of other lawyers that will put out videos, or there are other videos of people that are doing things in a traffic stop that you don't need to replicate. And just because they put it online and it went viral doesn't mean it's going to benefit you in your
Yeah,
situation.
exactly. Just because that they did that doesn't mean that you need to do the same thing because you have a different cop, different jurisdiction.
Right.
Even if it was the same situation, I wouldn't even.
And
But
who's to say that that ultimately worked for those people?
yeah,
Like you don't know you don't know that that's worked, or that maybe they're only posting the video of the time that that did work, and then the other times they've got a long
yeah.
rap sheet because they keep getting in trouble.
Yeah. When I was an
You don't
undergrad,
know.
actually, I studied criminal justice and political science, and one of my professors did tell us that you could put on the which legally, yes, you can. This is a legal thing. You can put on your window like your driver's license. Like you could provide everything you need to the cop without speaking to them. Like legally, you can.
Totally.
And like I don't know. It's just like that was kind of like promoted. And so I went in to law school with this mindset that it's like you don't really even need to. But now with like all the evidence I've seen, like if I swear there could be a compilation of all of these moments from all the evidence I've gotten and it would be hours long because it's so frequent that this does not go well. And so it's not that it's illegal. It's legal. Sure, yeah, you know your rights. You could do it, but is it going to benefit you? Is it going to work out well? No, it's not. And it's like saying that like I don't know, it's just like saying certain things like you've said this before like you can't take like nothing you say, I don't know what you said. Nothing you say will
You
make
will
it
never
better.
be able to talk your way out of a
Yes,
situation, but you can certainly talk your way into an arrest or additional
exactly.
charges or a new investigation
And
for
that
sure.
yeah, and that's so real, whether it's not just like for confessions, like in general
Right.
even. So like I definitely like I loved when you said that because I was like, that's so real. I want to like say that to every one of my clients.
Look, the person that reeks of alcohol that holds up their license to the window, like they're
Yeah.
doing that because they don't want that. But if you don't have that problem, okay, and you don't reek of alcohol, or you're gonna open the window and all this smoke is gonna come out. If you don't have either of those problems, then you should open the window and have a polite conversation with the
Yeah.
other human being on the other side of that window,
Yeah.
because you can treat the officer like a human being. And most of the time, if you do, the situation is going to go the best that it possibly can. If
Yes.
they were already going to arrest you for something, they're going to. But the best that it can go from that point forward is dictated by you being polite and not doing anything to make it escalate or be
Yeah.
aggressive.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
real good. Cool. All right. Well, I
So I think some of the most important takeaways from today: stay informed, stay respectful or polite, as I normally say. And if you're going to argue the law, make sure you actually know the law.
yeah. And if you don't know the law, hire a lawyer.
Correct. Or us.
Or better yet,
Us.
hire us.
Yeah.
Well, if you liked listening to this episode, make sure you check out the show notes and you subscribe to our newsletter for our weekly gems in your inbox. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe on all platforms. Come back with a warrant.pod and leave us a 5-star review. And if you did not like listening to us,
Come back with a warrant.